Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode we have Netflix 341st film from 2021. It's the Italian drama called The Last Paradise, or L'ultimo paradiso. It's directed by Rocco Ricciardulli and stars Riccardo Scamarcio, Gaia, Bermani, Amaral, and Valentina, Cervi. I'm Jesse. I'm your host. Thanks for joining me for this next Netflix original film as we're going through these international films. These 2021, some of these films, obviously, Netflix purchased quite a lot of international films during the pandemic, so that's sort of where we are stuck at the moment with a few of these. As always, if you haven't seen this film and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because we will spoil this as we go. Because we start the show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about a man who stands up for the land workers in his town, but his genitals lead him astray. His genitals. I was trying to think of a nice way of putting the male appendage into this Fast Flick. So I don't think I've ever done that before, but that's literally what this film is about. He's a player, that's for sure. So an international film, we like to talk a little bit about how it ended up on Netflix. This one's a little bit tricky. Not a lot to find out about this film. It was inspired by a true story where the Lucanian-born director, what do we say his name was? Rocco Ricciardulli. He was born there, and he became aware of this story as a child through tales that was told to him by his mother. So very loosely based on true stories, I guess. The film was shot in the towns of Gravina, in Apulia, Bari, and Trieste, and the trailer was released on Netflix Italian YouTube channel on January 12th, 2021. So not a lot about this film before it came out, that's for sure. It did hit Netflix on the 5th of February 2021. It was filmed, as I mentioned, in and around Italy, and it did have 2 nominations at the Golden Siac Awards, which is an Italian award, for Best Actor and for Best Supporting Actor, so recognised internally for that one. Around the world, there's only one translation that was sort of a little bit different. So in Turkish, it was called Love and Rebellion, and that definitely makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That 100% fits the title. But I guess the importance of the title with the English translation of The Last Paradise, which is the direct translation from Italian. Our surname of our main character in this film, or the main characters in this film, is Paradiso. That's their surname too. So it sort of ties in a little bit with that as well. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So on Rotten Tomatoes, does not have a consensus from critics. It has 3 reviews. These are all rotten, so not a good start for us. The audience has it at 53%. That's less than 50 ratings. So again, pretty poor on that percentage-wise. IMDb, it's a little bit higher on a 5.7 out of 10. That's on 1,700 ratings. Letterboxd, again, not an awful lot of ratings, about 1,100 ratings. That's at a 2.7 out of 5. Again, very low, but it's been logged by 1,600 people, and nothing on Metacritic for this one. So if we had to talk about how we can actually find some information about this one, not an awful lot online. What about my early thoughts? What am I thinking about this one? I think it's super melodramatic, but it's sort of held together by this gorgeous looking guy who sort of, even though you probably should hate him, you don't really, which is weird. And there's this big midsection shock that sort of turns the film into something different. I sort of liked that it was a little bit all over the shop. So I'm okay on this one. I'm okay. Let's talk about the characters in this film. This is going to take a little bit, I think, because this is about a small town in Italy. This is set, I think, was it post-World War II, pre-World War II, around that, 1950, so post-World War II, the struggles of people, and that's what this film is all about. So our main character is Cicio Paradiso. This is the guy I was mentioning. He's a man whore. Excuse the language. But this is a guy who neglects his son and his wife so he can have an affair with a much younger woman. He's desperate to move away with his lover and start a life somewhere else because he hates this small town that he's been stuck in. He thinks of no one except himself. And even his family, like not just his, wife and child, but those closest to him as well. They take a backseat to him. He thinks he has this bravado and power that his father had, and this influence that his father had in this town as well, I think. And on the outside, the people of the town do see him as this righteous man who stands up for those who can't, these villagers who are out picking olives on the fields and getting treated poorly. And so he appears to be, he's not afraid of doing what's right, I guess, just not between the sheets. And his friend, this Vincenzo guy, I'm pretty sure that was his name, he tries to keep him morally right, but he's almost ignored. So this is just another person that Chico treats poorly. And this is the main character of the film that, as an audience, you're supposed to be like, cool, I really want to see this guy run away with a mistress and be happy, even though we know the impact it's having on everyone else in that town. Very interesting. And his mistress, I guess, Bianco Schettino, she's the daughter of this opposing rich man in this town. And I guess this her father is everything that Chico despises. We'll talk about him in a second, but I guess Bianca, she also wants to escape this grasp that her father has on her life. She has a sister, Maria, who supports her and looks out for her, but her brother, Cosimo, he is their father's son. He is in on the bad and the ugly that the dad does to control power in this town. So I guess when these men are gone, so I did say spoiler alert, but once the men that support her and are around her in this town are gone, her and her sister Maria, they literally have nothing in life, and they're rejected by the town. And I'm not sure whether that's based on the time era. I guess it is. It's based on their gender, or it could also be based on the experience that the males in their family, the way that they treated the people of this town as well. Lucia is Chico's wife, or Chico? I keep saying Chico, but Cicero's wife. And she understands and knows, doesn't understand them, but knows of his infidelities, yet still stands by him. She definitely doesn't appreciate it. But deep down, she knows that he does love her. So she was a very confusing character because she didn't really stand her own, I guess. And then we've got to talk about Cumpa Schettino. That is Bianca's dad, Schettino. I think I'm horrible with my Italian at the moment. But he's the mayor of the town. He runs this town. He fears no one. When he discovers that his daughter, Bianca, is with Chico, he ruthlessly murders him and knows that he's not going to face any consequences. So, he pays the police in the town. He takes advantage of those who have little by paying, people really poorly. And I guess really poorly. Like, he sexually assaults quite a lot of the young females that come out that have nothing and need money and need work as well. And this guy is the villain of this film, realistically. Even though you should probably hate some of the other men in this film as well. I've sort of touched on this, but there is a big moment in the middle of the film that sort of changes the trajectory of this film. And we find that Chiquillo, he has this twin brother, Antonio, and he's the complete opposite of him, I guess. He wanted a better life. He's escaped the town, but he does come back to town to avenge his brother, Cicero's death. And, they're played by the same guy. They add a moustache on, and that's it. So use your imagination a little bit, I guess. And this is where it's frustrating as well. He comes in the second half of the film and it's like, yes, we want him to avenge and get revenge. And, he does the same as what Cicero did as well. He leaves his partner and in the end, he hooks in with Cicero's woman. It just was a little bit weird. I guess we'll talk about the ending a little bit later on as well. This film's been ruined for you already. I apologise if you did want to watch it. But let's talk about the director, Rocco Ricciardulli. This is his second feature film after this film called Suddenly Comia. He has two films in pre-production, one called Manasvali and another one called A Broken Family. So visually, and we'll talk about this soon, but visually, there's nothing wrong with this film. Maybe just needs to tighten up the script a little bit, but we'll talk about that soon. So let's talk about the scenes before we do that. So the scenes, what are some scenes that stood out? What are some things that weren't necessarily the best? I think that to start off with, there's this reveal that Bianca was Cumpa Schettino's daughter, and Cicero is sitting there meeting with him, and that sort of, I guess for me, that was a bit of a surprise. I probably wasn't expecting that. I probably should have seen it coming, and this is where that melodrama plays in, but that I thought that was a good little twist to start off with. We do see Cicero and Bianca. They have this lustrous night, I guess, in this farm barn, and the next morning, Bianca's inside the house telling her sister Maria all about it, and the brother Cosimo, he's oh, I'm gonna head out to the barn to get some eggs or something like that, and the sister, what's her name, name again? Maria. She's like, I've got to step in. She's realised he's going to find that Ceciro's out there in the barn. She covers for him. I just felt that tension. I thought that was really clever because, he's going around. He's like, oh, there's vermin in the barn, so he's stabbing around with a pitchfork. So I thought that was cool. Scatino, he has a go at, and this is Bianca's father, he has a go at his daughter for being with Cicero, and he calls her a whore, and she stands up to him. And she does this by, taking her clothes off in front of her own father and sort of stands there naked. And she's like, say you don't like it, because she then puts it on him that, I sort of mentioned this before, he takes advantage of people. And she's like, you make 15-year-old girls take their clothes off in the stable and you like it. I thought that was quite powerful. I thought that was good. And finally, Cicero, he goes to tell Scatino that, he wants to take his daughter Bianca away. And this sort of got me. Cicero, this is the end of him. This is the end of him halfway through the film. Because Scatino, he whacks him with a shovel, stabs him. I just didn't see that coming. So I thought that was a good little twist halfway through. It was almost like a Hitchcock style halfway through the film where you get this twist and you're like, where's the second half going to go? That was super surprising for me. All right, what are some things that I didn't necessarily like in this one? And there's a couple, I guess. There's this church scene where Cicero's son, he's just sort of he's in the church. His son's eating communion. They have a go at him, and then Cicero goes on this rant about how he's not there to confess because, and this is in relation to him obviously sleeping around a bit, but he's talking about, I'm not here to confess because I haven't committed any sin. So this is how he feels about himself. To him, sleeping with other women isn't a sin. He says, I just want to do things differently. And what's a sin to his wife isn't to him. It just didn't make sense. This is Italy. Italy, this is the home of the Catholic Church. I just felt like it felt a little bit off. There's a scene where Bianca, she goes to see her uncle. This is after her dad and her brother have died. And she goes to see her uncle for help, and he cracks onto her. I thought that was just super gross and not needed. And then there's this reveal right at the end that sort of felt like, it was right towards the end that wasn't needed, that Cicero's dad was Bianca's sister named Maria. It was the same dad. It just felt not needed. And finally, the final scene, the whole Antonio marrying Bianca, it felt super off. It just, I don't know, you just had to jump massively in faith to go, this is the deserved ending that Bianca needed. I don't know. It just didn't sit well for me. Themes, ideas. What's this film talking about? Obviously, there's a lot about 1950s Italy. There's that idea of the poor versus the rich. There's the idea of the greedy versus the desperate. That idea of exploitation, oppression, violence, standing up for the poor. Justice needing to be served as well. Also, the dream for a better life. We see that Cicero, he wants to get away, but also he bites into that forbidden fruit. He's the owner of the town almost, goes for his daughter, and I guess that leads into that generational divide. There's those that want to leave this town and those that want to stay in this town as well, like Cicero's mother. There's that idea too about, love and passion and being with who you think you should be with. Again, the migrant experience too, moving away, coming home, dealing with what's going on at home, staying, going for better or worse, that idea of hope as well. And we see that a little bit with Antonio as well. He decides to come back at the end too. Toxic masculinity plays a big role in this film too. All of the men in this film use and abuse the women for what they want. I get that this is a period piece, but it would be nice to see some feminine agency almost. The ladies, they offer to carry Cicero's coffin, but that doesn't count. That's it. That's all we get to see. I thought that was a little bit disappointing. And there's that idea too of having a twin or a brother, I guess, who you recognize in every kid that you see on the street, whether it's on a bus or playing soccer. Is it in Italian now? Is that calcio? I think if I remember correctly, calcio. That idea too. So that was interesting too. What did I take away from this one? The scenery, the way that this is shot is beautiful. The Italian scenery of this town, it just looks so nice. It's mesmerizing. If you've been to Italy and you've been to the countryside, you'd understand how this looks, and they've represented this so well on the screen. I thought it was really well done. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts, some ideas. This guy, the main guy in this film, is he like the Italian George Clooney? He just has this presence on the screen. And like I mentioned before, the way he acts and what he does, the confidence he shows and the arrogance he shows, you should not like this character, but there's a part of you that just can't stop looking at him. I don't know, it's a little bit like a Clooney-esque sort of character, so interested. I'd like to know if anyone knows. Another thing, I guess, is Cicero. He does not seem to care that his cheating actually hurts his wife. Why? How can someone be so arrogant to be like, well, you see it as a sin, but I don't, so I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I just thought that was super weird. But I guess that ties in with the arrogance of his character too. And the final observation, like I mentioned before, the middle of the film shocked me when we sort of saw Schettino kill Ceceo, and it was sort of implied that he sort of cut his male parts off, his junk off. It really appeared that way for me. Like, that shook me. I was like, shook me. That's a weird way to say it, but like, wow, interesting sort of way to think happened in the film. Anyway, I'm ready to wrap this one up. We give the film a rating out of 5 to come up with an average. I know I'm doing this show by myself, so there's no average. It's just my score. My final thoughts on this one. I think, this film's probably going to infuriate a lot of people with the jumps around and pretty ridiculous plot points, really. But I was into it almost, I think, except that final scene. I mean, this final scene, sort of like, this is a wedding that just doesn't make sense unless you're almost living in a fantasy world inside this film. But I'm still giving this a 3 out of 5. That's a solid score for me. We're on socials. We've got Twitter. We've got Facebook. We have we have Instagram. We have Facebook. And we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question that I wanted to put out there is, do you like olives? Just because this film is based around these people who pick olives. I hate olives. Do not put them on my pizza. Do not put them on my garlic bread or my herb bread. I don't know. I don't understand like olive oil, obviously used to cook, but the actual taste of olives, not a big fan. Tell me why you like them if you do. Anyway, we're back next week. Next week, we have another film from 2021. This one is a romantic drama called Malcolm and Marie. This one's directed by Sam Levinson, and it stars Zendaya and John David Washington. I remember when this came out, I watched this film. I'm not going to give away my thoughts. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you could probably sort of see already what I think of this film. I'm going to hold off on spoilers until next week, so that's sort of like a hook to listen next week and hear my thoughts. Other than that, as always, thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.